They didn't just walk away from you, they buried you. They didn't leave quietly. They didn't fade out like a bad memory. They paraded your downfall like a festival. They wanted witnesses. They wanted echoes. They wanted to watch you drown in silence. And you did. You sank. Not because you were weak, but because the weight was real. You tasted the dirt of betrayal. You breathed dust where trust used to stand. You felt the cold of every ghost that wore a warm smile once. They didn't just abandon you. They executed you quietly, slowly, cleanly. The kind of death that doesn't need knives, only absence. You remember those moments, don't you? When they looked at your struggle and smirked, when your voice trembled and theirs turned sharp, when you reached with hope and they answered with distance. That's the kind of silence that kills, not bullets, not blades, silence. You felt humiliation press against your ribs like steel bars. You felt your knees touch the floor, not from weakness, but from impact. Because even the strongest structures shake when the foundation cracks. And no one came. Not a single hand reached into your collapse. They watched, arms folded, hearts empty. Some laughed, some whispered, some pretended they never knew you. They turned your pain into entertainment. They fed on your hurt like vultures on a carcass. Your name became a punchline. Your dreams became rumors. Your silence became proof, in their eyes, that you were done, lost, finished, buried. And yet, in that darkness, in that suffocating grave of disappointment, you didn't rot. You changed. They thought the silence would kill you, but silence became your forge. Your lungs burned, and that burn made you breathe differently, slower, deeper, sharper, because rock bottom has a sound, a rhythm, a heartbeat that says, not yet. You felt betrayal crawl under your skin like frost. You felt humiliation burn in your chest like coal. You tasted bitterness so sharp it carved your tongue into iron. And like Caesar bleeding under the Senate's feet, you learned. Loyalty dies first. Trust bleeds fastest. Love is a blade, and the closest hands always hold it. But those who fall quietly rise violently. That's the rule of history, of kings, of monsters, of legends carved from agony instead of glory. They saw your silence. They labeled you defeated. They saw you on your knees. They forgot knees are where warriors tie their laces. Every exit hardened you. Every ghost sharpened you. Every mocking laugh turned into a blade you now carry. You tasted loneliness like iron on your tongue, metallic and bitter. But iron builds steel, and steel builds empires. You didn't break. You decomposed into something unrecognizable, something primal, something ancient. A hunger with a pulse. They think graves end stories, but graves build roots. Roots twist. Roots tear through soil and stone until the world feels them. And you, buried alive, became something else down there. Something colder, something wiser, something more dangerous than forgiveness. You stopped looking for light. You became the dark that hunts the dawn. And while they celebrated your end, you were learning what endings really are. They are beginnings with sharper teeth. You let the world forget you. You let masks fall. You let betrayal teach you what loyalty never could. You didn't return to be seen. You learned to move unseen. No applause, no audience, only discipline, only hunger, only evolution. Let them believe you vanished. Let them choke on their certainty. Let them think silence means surrender. It means calculation. You don't crawl back. You erupt. You don't chase. You replace. You don't need them. You outgrow them. And the beauty? They wrote your ending with cheap ink. You carved your return with blood, scar, discipline, and refusal. Remember this. People don't bury you out of pity. They bury you out of fear. Fear that you might stand again. Fear that you might see the truth. Fear that once you rise, they'll never be safe again. You're not their memory anymore. You are their consequence. You emerged from the grave without mercy, without softness, without illusion. You didn't rise to be accepted. You rose to be inevitable. Walls don't cage you. Graves don't silence you. Betrayal doesn't break you. It trains you. Every grave they built for you only opened a deeper hunger. They called your silence weakness, but silence is where predators grow fangs. They expected you to cry, to beg, to plead for understanding, but you didn't crack, you didn't chase, you didn't scream to be seen. You just disappeared. And that terrified them more than any roar ever could. Because people aren't scared of noise. They're terrified of silence. Silence means thinking. Silence means calculation. Silence means evolution. You vanished into quiet like a blade slipping into a sheath. Not defeated, just waiting. In those quiet corners, you rebuilt your spine, bone by bone. You stitched yourself back together without witnesses, without applause, without comfort. You learned who clapped when you bled, who smiled when you fell, who softened their voice when you won. Because victory exposed their jealousy. Betrayal didn't blind you, it sharpened you. They thought silence meant suffering, silence meant studying. You studied pain the way a general studies war maps. You dissected every sting, every bruise on your heart. You turned each scar into strategy, each tear into armor, each memory into ammunition. You became a student of darkness. You mastered the curriculum of cold transformation. Pain wasn't punishment. Pain was the teacher that never lied to you. And while the world slept, while they celebrated your absence, while they believed your chapter was closed, you were redesigning your entire existence. Your rage matured. It stopped shaking, stopped burning recklessly. It cooled, it crystallized, it turned surgical. You don't roar anymore. You calculate. You don't ask for loyalty. You observe it. You don't fight emotion blindly. You weaponize it. That's the kind of fire they should fear. Not the flame that dances, but the flame that waits. Quiet is not surrender. Quiet is transformation. Quiet is where evolution breathes. Quiet is where monsters learn patience. You learned the art of stillness the way ancient warriors learned the art of steel. You listened, not to respond, but to understand. You saw every fake smile stretch thin. You saw every disappearing act. You saw who talked to you only when life was gentle, and who vanished when storms arrived. You learned the rule the world hides inside kindness. No one hears a breaking heart. Everyone hears a rising one. So you stopped talking, stopped explaining, stopped defending your light to people who enjoy darkness more. You shut the doors. You bolted the windows. You sat in the quiet and let the world forget you. But forgetting you was their first mistake, and believing you needed them was their final illusion. Because isolation didn't suffocate you. It fed you. It carved discipline into your bones. It taught you hunger without desperation, ambition without noise, revenge without chaos. Every insult became steel beneath your skin. Every betrayal became fuel for your pulse. Every abandonment became cement in your backbone. They thought you shattered, but you were learning how to not need anyone. They thought you shattered, but you were learning how to not need anyone. They walked away thinking you were broken. But broken things are fragile, and you became unbreakable. They ghosted you. You outgrew them. They lied to you. You learned truth sharper than glass. They tried to replace you. You replaced your need for them. One by one, the illusions fell away. The masks dissolved. The noise faded. Only clarity remained, and clarity is the most dangerous weapon a betrayed soul can hold. You didn't stand up with noise. You stood up with precision. People forget this. A predator does not warn the forest before it hunts. There is power in quiet fury. There is strength in watching without being seen. There's danger in patience married to ambition. And you became both storm and stillness. Deathly calm, disaster, waiting. You didn't rise to prove anything. You rose because silence is not hiding. It's loading. They should have feared the day you stopped explaining yourself. They should have feared the day you stopped needing validation. They should have feared the day you accepted solitude like a throne instead of a prison. You don't need their cheers. You don't need their company. You don't need their mercy. You only need focus, discipline, silence, fire that doesn't flicker. And now you walk differently. You breathe differently. You don't look for hands. You sharpen your own claws. You don't rebuild trust. You build walls they can't climb. Your soul carries a new temperature, cold, clear, unforgiving, and it suits you. Power always does. You didn't rise to beg. You rose to collect what you are owed. You didn't rise to beg. You rose to collect what you are owed. You didn't come back to prove them wrong. You came back to remind them pain has memory. You walk differently now. Not louder, not wilder, different, measured, predatory, intentional. They remember the laugh you used to have. They remember the hands that clapped. They remember the face that smiled when the sun was kind. They do not remember this step. No softness survives betrayal. Softness is a currency they spent. They used it on themselves. They spent it on convenience. They spent it on excuses. You didn't. Every step echoes like a threat, a metronome for their nervous bones. You don't need noise to be noticed. Your presence bends the room like a storm bending trees. Your silence drips like poison into their comfort. It slides into their small certainties. It eats at the thin film of safety they call success. They never saw the slow work of you becoming cold. Mercy is a luxury for those who never tasted betrayal. It is for the naive, the unscarred, the soft. You learned mercy costs too much. It buys nothing but more chances for the same knives to return. They learned mercy towards you when it was cheap. Now it would bankrupt them. They don't fear your voice. They fear the absence of it. When a predator speaks softly, the world leans in, not to comfort, but to count days. You are not healing. Healing implies a return to what was. You do not return to what was. You evolve. You morph into something untouchable. Not because wounds closed, but because wounds taught precision. They taught timing. They taught the geometry of punishment. Ask yourself, what is more terrifying? The scream or the slow approach? The scream is fireworks. The slow approach is a siege. They celebrate when someone screams. They forget the steady drum that breaks the walls the scream never could. You learned that people worship spectacle. They do not respect the slow work. So you do the slow work, silently, relentlessly, with patience sharpened to a razor. You carry scars like medals, not for sympathy, for strategy. Every scar is a map of where the world tried to tear you and failed. You are a living archive, a ledger of every wrong done to you, every slight entered as credit, every betrayal marked as interest. They think time softens everything. Time only refines what is ready to be refined. It does not erase debt. It compounds it. You moved through nights and calculus. You converted grief into blueprints. You converted ridicule into rituals. You converted absence into appointment. They expected fireworks. They will get something else. A calculated avalanche. A collapse that has been seeded for years. You don't need to announce the fall. The fall arrives as consequence. Walls crumble from within. Trust rots where it was built on lies. You walk differently now because you walked through a mirror and came out knowing the cracks. You walked through betrayal and learned architecture. You walked through humiliation and learned sculpture. Power is not stolen. It is summoned. It is grown like a machine. Gears tuned, joints oiled, pistons aligned. You are that machine. Cold metal, precise motion, quiet power. They whisper myths about you, half-truths and rumors. Let them. Stories have a way of feeding fear when the facts are sharp and simple. You do not beg for apologies. You do not wait for them to remember. You do not need their forgiveness bolted to the same floor as your throne. What you want is simple. Balance, acknowledgement, the quiet satisfaction of witnessing consequence land like a stone. Remember Caesar. Remember how men in togas celebrated victory, then plunged knives. Remember how the crowd turned to shadows. Betrayal dresses as allies. It smiles with warm hands and cold pockets. Legends are forged from those who turned betrayal into inevitability. You are writing the same sentence. This time, the period comes with weight. You'll be calm when they panic. You'll be precise when they scatter. You'll be the clock no one knows how to stop. And when they search for the noise that returned you, they will only find an echo of discipline. They will only find the footprints of a program, not chaos, not drama, not petty revenge. You create patterns. You execute them. They fail to notice the years behind the outcome. They only see the result, and the result terrifies. You were taught to be soft. You were taught to wait for mercy. You were taught to beg for space in others' hearts. You rewired that language. Now compassion is controlled. Now kindness is currency, spent only on those who survived the test. If kindness is given freely, it loses value. You reserve it. You ration it. You allocate it to those who will not stab you with it. Later, do they hear that? Do they feel the weight of a withheld forgiveness? They will. This is not about being cruel. This is about being wise. This is about not letting your bone-deep lessons be used as rope to hang you again. You are a predator of circumstance. You hunt habits. You dismantle rituals. You target the soft underbelly of their certainty. And in this new body, mercy looks like strategy. Forgiveness looks like rearranging power. Love looks like armor. They will not know when the shift happens. They will only know the moment the storm hits their windows. They are comfortable with ghosts. They are not comfortable with embodiment. You are embodied wrath. You are embodied retribution. You are embodied consequence. You return not to be forgiven. You return to be the ledger that finally balances. You didn't come back to console anyone. You came back to settle accounts. You didn't return as proof. You returned as punishment. Kings aren't born. They crawl through hell until the crown bows. You didn't rise by accident. You rose because pain wouldn't let you stay down. You rose because quiet wasn't enough anymore. You rose because darkness didn't scare you. It raised you. People think thrones come from birthright, but you know better. Thrones come from scars, from hunger, from refusal. Your scars don't hide. They command. They tell a story written in ache and answered with discipline. They show where you were cut and where you refused to bleed out. They'll stare, they'll whisper, they'll try to decode the new shape you walk in. Let them fail. You didn't evolve to be understood. You evolved to be untouchable. The world bends only to those who refuse to kneel. You learned that truth in silence, in nights where your chest felt heavy like steel, in mornings where getting up was war, and you fought anyway. You don't ask for respect. You extract it, not through noise, not through rage, through presence, that cold, calculated quiet that makes those who betrayed you straighten their posture and drop their gaze. You don't chase validation. You don't seek applause. You became the applause. You became the standard, the line they can't cross, the weight they can't carry. They feared your silence. Now they fear your footsteps. Because every step you take feels like judgment day to the ones who counted you out. You don't roar anymore. Your calm is louder. Your stillness burns deeper. Your eyes carry the storm they prayed you'd never survive. You became the storm they never prepared for. Not lightning, too merciful. Not thunder, too temporary. You became the pressure before the strike, the atmosphere that tightens throats, the cold realization that nothing is safe anymore. You don't owe softness to a world that sharpened you with cruelty. You don't owe warmth to the hands that froze you out. You don't owe loyalty to those who fed off your downfall. They built their comfort on your absence. They practiced celebration over your silence. Now every breath you take unsettles them. Every step disturbs the peace they stole from you. Let them remember history. Empires rise from ashes, not from applause. Dynasties are built by those who refuse to disappear politely. You didn't rebuild to sit quietly. You rebuilt to rule quietly. You are not a survivor. You are a sovereign of scars. You are not a survivor. You are a sovereign of scars. Survivors return. Sovereigns decide who's allowed to stay. Your throne isn't gifted, it's taken, and not by violence, but by inevitability. People expect kings to roar, but true kings speak in silence. They move without announcing. They conquer without warning. They rise without permission. And now, when they speak your name, it doesn't sound casual anymore. It carries weight, hesitation, fear, respect twisted with regret. They don't look at you like they used to. They look at you like someone who came back different, sharper, quieter, darker, untouchable by the softness that once betrayed you. That's the true crown. Not gold, not jewels, certainty. The certainty that you can rebuild from nothing. The certainty that you don't break. You recalibrate. The certainty that every wound only carved deeper resolve into your bones. They once thought you needed their approval. Now they pray you never need their forgiveness. Because forgiveness in your hands is power, and power in your hands has memory. You don't move for applause. Applause follows movement. You don't seek a crown. Crowns migrate to gravity, and you became gravity. You don't follow thrones. Thrones shift to orbit you. They prayed Yorade gone. Now their prayers sound like apologies. They didn't fear your fall. They celebrated it. They toasted to your silence. They bet on your disappearance like gamblers who thought the game was rigged in their favor. But fate has a sense of humor, and karma doesn't forget names. It catalogs them. You didn't rise to be seen. You rose to be felt. And now the air around you carries warning. Not noise, warning. There's a difference between someone who survived pain and someone who became pain. You didn't adapt to the cold. You married it. You learned to breathe in the freeze. Your veins don't run with blood. They run with memory. And memory stings longer than wounds ever do. Now they tremble. Not because you're angry, but because you're calm. Calm is fear's older brother. Calm means certainty. Calm means the storm already happened, and they never saw you build it. You do not raise your voice. Your silence holds verdicts. Your eyes carry sentences. Your presence rearranges the air like gravity woke up and chose a new axis. This is the stage where kings don't speak. They judge. They remember when you begged. You remember when they enjoyed it. They remember when you called. You remember when they didn't pick up. They remember your hand reaching. You remember their hands recoiling. Now their voices stutter. Their confidence leaks like a wound they can't hide. They fear your shadow more than they ever respected your light. Because when a man returns from silence, he doesn't come back for validation. He comes back as consequence. You're not here to negotiate peace. Peace is granted only to those who never weaponized your kindness. You are here so truth can breathe again. So memory can sharpen again. So betrayal can be invoiced properly. They used to laugh. Now laughter dies in their throats like a bird learning gravity too late. They used to question you. Now they question themselves, their worth, their safety, their place in a world where your name has become a storm warning. This is the moment where you don't chase revenge. You embody it. Revenge is a child's hunger. Retribution is a king's feast. They clap in your light, but vanish in your storm, and storms don't negotiate. You became the walking reminder that no one should celebrate too early, that ghosts are eternal, that graves misjudge what's buried, that silence is not death, it is a loading screen. And now look at them, frozen in their own guilt, choking on the taste of consequences. They want forgiveness. Forgiveness is earned in a currency they never carried. Loyalty when no one is watching. Respect when no one is clapping. Presence when the world turns cold. You owe them nothing. Not warmth, not softness, not mercy disguised as maturity. Growth doesn't mean forgetfulness. Strength doesn't mean stupidity. Power doesn't mean peace. Sometimes power is simply not letting the past walk freely. Let them tremble. Let them feel the pulse of every choice they made. Let them whisper your name like a locked door in a nightmare. You don't need to hurt them. Life will handle that. Guilt will handle that. Time will handle that. You are simply the reminder. You didn't become fire to warm them. You became fire so they learn not to play with flames again. You didn't evolve to prove they were wrong. You evolved so they understand you never needed them to be right. You didn't climb out to rebuild the old version of yourself. You climbed out to show the universe what happens when someone refuses to rot where they were buried. Now you walk like closing statements. Now your silence sounds like verdicts. Now your footsteps feel like countdowns. This is the age of reckoning. Your reckoning, their invoice. You didn't return to participate in the same world. You returned to redraw it, and they feel it. In the tightening of their voice, in the hesitation of their words, in the sudden respect disguised as caution. You are not a warning anymore. You are the arrival, and every empire that ignored its own storm eventually learned. Storms don't knock, storms enter. You killed the version of yourself that begged for space, and in its place, you created someone who owns territory. Let them tremble, let them repent silently, let them swallow every smirk, every doubt, every absence. This is not revenge. Revenge is petty. This is a reclamation. This is restoration. This is the rise they feared and pretended they didn't. You didn't come to make peace. You came to collect. And collections are never gentle. You didn't return to be welcomed. You returned to be remembered. A moment passes. Legends don't. Time shifted when you rose. Not for the world. For them, for the ones who buried you, for the ones who whispered your end like gospel, for the ones who thought silence meant surrender and absence meant defeat. Now your name arrives before you do. It travels like a cold wind through closed rooms. It sits in conversations you aren't present in. It lingers in hearts that once laughed at you. Names are echoes, some fade, yours sharpened. It cuts now, it announces, it warns. You don't walk into spaces hoping to be respected. Spaces shift into alignment when you enter. Eyes adjust, voices straighten. Energy corrects itself like a soldier fixing posture before a commander. That's power, not noise, not arrogance, not shouting dominance with fragile lungs. True power is silent obedience without a single command. True presence is gravity. You don't ask things to fall. They fall because they must. You are no longer a chapter in their story. You are the book, the reference, the lesson they quote, but cannot imitate. You are not looked at. You are measured against. You are not spoken to. You are spoken about. Not always with admiration, but always with caution. They don't have to like you. They just have to remember you. And they do. Oh, they do. They remember the version they underestimated, and they see the version you forged in fire. and winter. There is grief in their eyes now. Not grief for losing you, but grief for losing the chance to stand beside you. You are not angry anymore. Anger was a tool. You used it. Then you shelved it like any weapon outgrown by mastery. You don't rise fueled by rage now. You rise fueled by certainty. This world bends for the disciplined. It kneels for the relentless. It clears a path for the one who refused to vanish. You belong to a rare breed. Those who survive death without dying. Those who return from silence with presence thicker than storms. Those who do not need validation because the world's reaction is validation. You are calm now, not because the war ended, but because you became the battlefield. And those who once doubted you, they mimic you now. They study your voice. They borrow your tone. They imitate the silence they once mocked. When the world fears losing you, it copies you. They didn't lose you. They lost access to you. And that loss weighs heavier than your absence ever did. Your rise is not noise. It is a rule, a shift in the natural order, a new equation where you are the reference point. You don't chase legacy. Legacy bleeds out of your footsteps naturally. You don't carve your name in marble. Your name carves itself into time, and time listens. Because time respects those who earned their throne in hours nobody saw. In pain, nobody comforted. In nights, nobody witnessed. The universe does not hand crowns. It tests for them. And you passed every trial they swore would break you. Stand now, not taller, deeper, not louder, heavier. A presence that does not announce itself. It arrives like consequence. You are not a memory. You are a monument. You are not a comeback story. You are a new era. Your silence became scripture. Your scars became signatures. Your steps became laws. People rise, people fall. But legends don't move. The world moves around them. And now your legacy begins where their comfort ends, where their control collapses, where their certainty shatters at the sight of you standing unshaken. You don't walk with pride, you walk with proof. You don't demand loyalty. True loyalty trails you dramatically. Let them watch, let them whisper. Let them analyze the steps they never had the discipline to take. You are not returning anymore. You have arrived. You're not trying anymore. You are. And in this era, your name walks before you. Your presence walks beside you. Your legacy walks behind you. You did not rise to be remembered. You rose to be unforgettable. This is not the end. This is the beginning of the world, learning who you truly